Welcome to another episode of Dad Up, everyone. Thank you guys very much for joining me. As always, I am excited for this guest that I have on this week because he's a former baseball player of a team that I'm a huge fan of, was on a team that I was a huge fan of. My son's a huge fan of, and he's a World Series champion. And I'm really excited to dive into his backstory, but my good friend Ryan Lavarnway has joined me on Dad Up. Welcome to the show, brother.
Bryan, how you doing, brother? Glad we could finally do this.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking for a while, and I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. I do want to know kind of your backstory for my listeners or viewers who may not know who you are, but just kind of a little context as far as what I was talking about with the team. My son is a diehard Red Sox fan, just beyond like he worships the ground the Red Sox walk on. So I had the fortunate I was able to take him to the Red Sox Dodgers World Series when they were out here in California, because that's where I'm at. So he and I had a great time. But every year, Ryan, every year we have a family tradition where he and I go to a Red Sox Angels game every single year, just the two of us. I usually buy all three games. So he and I will go one game. And then the next game, he and his brother will go. And then the last game, my wife and I and both of my boys will go. So we do that. We've been doing that every year for, gosh, my son and I have been going to those games for 10 years now, 12 years. It's just been a lot of fun. It's something we really enjoy doing. But anyways, that's just a little sidebar. He's a huge Red Sox fan. I know you played for the Red Sox. You won a World Series with the Red Sox. So it's incredible. But I want to dive into your backstory, kind of how you grew up, how you got into the things that you're doing as far as baseball and all that kind of stuff, and then what you're doing now, and obviously more importantly about your family as well.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. First of all, you've definitely seen me play if you go to the Angels games, because there was a series in 2013. So you said it started 10 to 12 years ago.
Yeah.
In 2013, we played a series. I was on the Red Sox where I caught all three games in Anaheim. And the thing I remember the most about this series, honestly, is not what you expect. When they do the national anthem, they shoot off fireworks when the Rockets' red glare, right? Well, the first 2 days, the bullpen coach reminded me, say, hey, don't be afraid of the pyro, because it's right behind home plate in the visitors' bullpen, like 10 feet away from where I stand before the game starts. On the third day, he forgot to warn me, figuring, well, he just did it 2 days in a row. He probably knows there's going to be pyro. I forgot, and I almost pooped my pants. It scared the living daylights out of me there in Anaheim. So that was a fun way to start that final road game. But you asked about my history. So I started playing baseball when I was 5 years old because my kindergarten teacher told my parents that I was bad at sharing.
Interesting.
And that I should be involved in a team sport. And the rest is history. I loved it. I played all the way from the time I was 5 until I just retired this past season. And, I love baseball as much as anything.
So, okay. So you played when was the last time that you played what was the last year that you played for the Red Sox? Was it 13?
Red Sox was 2011 through 2014.
Okay, 2014. All right. So there was a game against Angels Red Sox, and I don't remember if that was 14. Maybe it was later. But there was a game one year that my son and I, we did our normal thing, and it went like 23 innings.
Oof, wasn't
and
me.
I bought the cheap seats, but like nosebleed, but I always bought right over home plate. That's where I always bought. So they were perfect seats. Even though they're up high, they were perfect seats. And he wanted it's like going into like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 innings. And he doesn't want to leave. He's not going to leave. Like, he's like, I don't want to leave. I'm like, okay, we're in for the long haul. Right. I never thought in a million years, it's like 22, 23 innings. And by this time we'd moved down because I think there was about 10 people left in the stadium because it was like 3 a.m. It was like 10 people left. So we moved down so we could see, and we stayed that entire time, and Red Sox ended up winning. So it ended up being a fun time, but it was a log because it started at 7:00 and it went till 2. I think we left there like 2:30 in the morning. It was insane. But anyways, my son, I should say both my boys are sports fanatics. They grew up playing sports. I've coached every single one of their teams that they were on from the ages of 4 all the way up through high school. So I share that story because that's how involved I've been as a dad, just from baseball to football to basketball, those are the sports that I coached. So I've coached thousands of kids. But my son, the one that I've been talking about in particular, he's always been a Red Sox kid. And even in Little League, we always had to be the Red Sox. We were always the Red Sox. Yeah. So he grew up around baseball, loved baseball, played it all the way through high school, but he ended up getting a basketball scholarship to play in college. So he played basketball in college. So it's kind of funny that he grew up just a diehard baseball kid, and here he is getting a basketball scholarship. But for you, growing up, was that the only sport that you played? Was it that much of a,
I played a couple seasons of basketball. I was never as good. I never loved it as much. I was the grinder that would get rebounds and dish it to someone else for the score, for the glory.
So since playing basketball, and we're not really a big fan of it, you really stuck to baseball, obviously. And is that so that carried you, I mean, through college? Obviously, you went to a pretty darn good school. For those of you that don't know, he went to Yale. And so he's got a philosophy.
And Bryan, you know what? You can't imagine how many times I've had to answer the question, well, why the heck did you go to Yale?
Right.
It's because there's been more U.S. presidents than baseball players to come out of the Yale baseball team.
Right. I mean, you're just that smart. I mean,
I wasn't a super student in high school as far as effort. I think I was a good test taker. So high school grades came easily. I always worked hard, but not like harder than everyone else.
Yeah.
I think I ended up at Yale more because they recruited me for baseball and not a lot of other people did. And I grew up in Southern California. I was a Dodger fan. I went to Angels games growing up too. And when I was thinking about college, my dad went to USC. I thought I'd go to USC. And they were like, no, thanks. You're not good enough to play here at this time.
Wow.
So when I got recruited for baseball, I basically got recruited to Harvard, Yale, Cornell, Dartmouth, and UC Davis. And that's it.
Wow. I mean, and when you played in Yale, you broke records. I mean, you were one of their elite players.
Yeah. Well, so my freshman year, I didn't break any records. I was very average in the Ivy League. And then really what it was I saw our first baseman. His name is Mark Sawyer. He was awarded all Ivy League. And I was like, that's cool. I didn't know they did that. I want to win all Ivy League. And my volunteer assistant hitting coach, who was the guy I gravitated towards, he raised the bar to a standard that I had never even considered before. He said, why would you stop at all Ivy League? You should win all American. And if you don't, by the time you graduate, I'll probably be disappointed. And with that, like, my head exploded, my stomach sank with the weight of that expectation. I started working harder than I had ever worked. I started becoming and trying to embody what I imagined an All-American would be. So much so that I started going to the weight room until my coach had to kick me out so I didn't miss class. And like I was watching the cartoon Dragon Ball Z. Have you ever seen this TV show?
I heard of it. I don't know if I've ever seen it.
At one point, they strip off their weighted clothing. They're like, yeah, I live in weighted clothing so that when I fight, I'm stronger. I was like, ooh, I wonder if I could do that. And I bought a weight vest that was form-fitting and you could wear it under your clothes. And I wore a weight vest every minute of the day for 2 months. It sounds ridiculous, right? Like when me and my boys were like having a drink in college and we're being bros, they would like punch my stomach because I had steel plates under my shirt. And really I don't know if it made me a better baseball player, but by the time the season started, I had this stack of undeniable evidence of the work that I had put in that I couldn't argue with. I've put the work in, now I deserve to play better. So it was really his expectation and then me trying to embody what I thought that meant that took me to the next level.
Do you think was there any type of father figure in that coach that you're referring to? I mean, you were looking for him to be proud of you in a way, right? And that's what made you really wanted to get after it. Was he a father figure for you? Because your parents are, I'm guessing, we're out here in California. You're out at Yale, so there's a little bit of that distance there. How
Yeah,
did
that's
that
interesting.
how did that show up in your life?
That's interesting. I never considered that before because I love my father. I think my
Right.
father is a great example. Um, he didn't play in the major leagues, but he has always worked hard. He's always been a grinder, and I would say the number one value he's instilled in me is work ethic. He always said, "It doesn't matter how you do as long as you do your best."
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I mean, I can totally see that. I mean, as far as that other coach goes, he played that, I guess, that missing piece while you're away at college. Your parents are obviously out here. You respected your dad, looked up to your dad, knew your dad was a hard worker, loved your dad very much. But at the same time, you had this other guy who you really looked up to and admired on the coaching side of things. But looked at him like, listen, I've coached thousands of kids in my life, and there have been kids that have looked at me as kind of that father figure because they didn't have a dad in their life or something like that. Yours is a little bit different where your dad was involved, but at the same time, you had this other guy that was going, you got something, kid. And if you work this hard and get that dream accomplished, I'm going to be proud of you. That was what that message was saying to you. And
Yeah,
that's what I
interesting.
see. And I'm wondering, kind of looking back on that now, how's that relationship now? Do you still keep in touch with that coach or?
No, you know what? I don't. And it's so interesting. I think it's been so easy for me in my life to have extra surrogate mothers. You know, my mother also is great. My mother loves me more than anything. But whenever I have a friend's mom, I automatically call her mom also, right? Or grandma also, depending on the age difference. I've never thought about it for dads, but you know what? You might be right. Having extra surrogate dads, having extra father figures never hurts.
Yeah.
Anytime you can get that extra male role model. I'm loving this idea right now, Bryan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, my boys have significant, I was a coach for them as they played sports, but there is other coaches that, that I worked with or coached with that they
Yeah.
looked up to and admired, including their high school basketball coach, a guy that's a really good friend of mine. They looked up and admired him and for what he represented. And so maybe there's some truth behind that, but all right. So let me hear about your family. Tell me a little bit about your family and about I know you have one daughter, right?
My family. So when I think of my family now, I think of myself, my wife, and my daughter.
Right.
Um, and then the more extended family, I have my sister, her husband, and my parents are in California. And then my wife's parents and sister and her little family are here in Colorado with us.
Oh, cool. How old's your daughter?
My daughter is almost 1.5.
So you're a rookie dad.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe I'm a sophomore dad, right? Once you turn one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you got a long ways to go because my boys are my older son's about to be 25. My younger son just turned 22. So I've got a few runs around the neighborhood on you as far as being a dad goes. But what have you enjoyed most about cherishing the time with your daughter?
I'm obsessed with my daughter. I remember when my mom wrote a birthday card for my daughter's first birthday. She was like, "Your dad can't stop kissing you," and that stood. That's how I feel. I spend time with her. It's cool to see the world through her eyes, and just to be there. And I've had a few times where I had to travel for work, and I've been away for tournaments or speaking or coaching or something like that. So every time I get back, I'm just so grateful for the time I get to spend with her. And anytime she's frustrated, it's it feels easy to be patient when I see her upset with small things.
Mm-hmm.
But to her, I know that those small things feel like as big as the world.
Right.
So I just love being in it in the moment with her.
Well, I have to say that, you've probably heard this many times already, but don't blink. That's all I can say is don't blink because it goes by super fast. And like I said, my younger son's a senior. My younger son's a senior in college now. So he'll graduate in May of next year. My older son's already done with college, and I can still remember dropping them off their first day of freshman in high school. I can just remember watching them walk away as freshmen in high school and thinking, here they are, grown men now doing their own thing. So It's going to go by fast. And one thing that I could tell you is, and I tell this to a lot of dads because I do coach dads too. And one thing that I tell them is, listen, your kids spell love Time. So the
Yeah.
more time that you give to them, that's what they're going to remember. That's what they're going to use to really grow and develop that love and bond with you. How hard is it for Ryan to go on these, when you have to travel, especially during the season, when you have to travel? How hard is that for you? And what kind of an impact does that have on your family, on your wife and your daughter?
Well, for me, that was why I decided to retire from playing baseball. I still had offers to play this past season in a similar role that I had been playing in, so it wasn't a demotion at all. But when my daughter was born 2 seasons ago, I got traded when she was 9 days old. We were
Wow.
actually at a newborn photo shoot. She was on my actual jersey
Hmm.
as I got the phone call to say, "How fast can you be in Florida?"
Wow.
And I remember saying, "Well, you got to give me at least till tomorrow. I can't pack up and leave my wife who's still broken from birth and my daughter who can't do anything on her own, 9 days old." So I got traded. My wife ended up having to drive from Ohio. She met us on the road in Nashville. And then I had to fly with the team from Nashville to Florida, fly back to drive with her back to Florida. It was a disaster.
Hmm.
And we decided, this isn't sustainable. We chose our entire relationship. We were married for almost 10 years before we decided to have a baby. And we chose to spend our time together for all that. A lot of baseball players, a lot of athletes, the spouse doesn't have the luxury of traveling to the home city. So they're apart for a long time. In our family, we've always made it a priority to be together. So I decided to not play so that I could be a family man.
Hmm.
And now as I leave for if it's a few days for a speech, it's okay. FaceTime helps. But recently I had traveled to the Czech Republic for 3 weeks to play in a tournament where Blake didn't come. My daughter didn't come. And it's hard because you leave and she was a baby. And I came back and I was like, oh, she's a toddler now.
Right.
Like, she's not a baby. She's different. What did I miss? And all I can say is thank God for FaceTime.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it can be tough. I get it. But yeah, technology is amazing. I think it's remarkable how easy it is now to be witness to things, even when we can't be there all the time. And it's funny you say that you stepped away from baseball so that way you can focus on being a dad and being a husband, and that's commendable. There's not a lot of dads, not a lot of men that can do that, and a lot of times men will carry this burden on their shoulder of really having to be the provider for their family. So they think they have to be gone these 80 hours a week in order to have this success and provide everything for their family that they need. And the truth is that you don't have to be gone all those hours. You can still have a successful business or a successful career, but you can also still be a successful dad. And it's just a matter of, there's no real set balance, no such thing as balance in life, right? But there are ways to kind of help things kind of balance out as best as possible. For you, that decision was, hey, this is what's right for us. I have to step away from this in order to be there for my family. And that, I've got to say, there's just not a lot of dads like that will do that. A lot of dads feel that their legacy starts outside the home. And I'm here to tell you that your legacy doesn't start outside your home. Your legacy starts within your home. And that's something that unfortunately a lot of broken families realize that significance once that role model is gone, or once that role model has kind of stepped away from the family, or broken the family apart because they've put career over family. And for you, I mean, baseball players in general, I do know some baseball players, and I have one guy that's a good friend of mine, Shea Hillenbrand, played for the Red Sox. He did the same thing. He saw his life going in a different direction because of baseball, and it was impacting his family. And he did the same thing. He walked away. He left millions of dollars on the table and walked away to be there for his wife and kids. So I say all that just to commend you for the decision that you made. And your daughter, she may not fully understand it now, but she will when she starts to grow into who she is as a person. So good job, dude.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, she I'm obsessed with her.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. She's the best.
I want to ask you this though, when it comes to playing sports, how involved or how willing are you going to be to let your daughter, you know, if she wants to dabble in sports or she wants to be in gymnastics or maybe it's softball?
Yeah.
What's that? What is your position on those things?
So I have given youth baseball lessons, high school lessons for the entirety of my baseball career. So for 15 years, I've been coaching other people's kids. And it's been interesting to see the parent involvement,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm giving a private lesson, and there's times where the dad will try to correct the things I'm coaching, and I'm like, I'm literally the best in the world at this. I think I know how to do it, right? Or there's times where the parent drops the kid off and doesn't come back till the end.
Right.
There's times where the kid doesn't want to be there, but has to be there because the parent is forcing them. And there's times where the parent is like, do you think he's doing too much? Because he does this all the time and that's all he ever wants to do. So I know that my daughter is almost 1.5, and it is very easy for me to say this right now, but my hope for myself and for her is that I let her lead the way. And if she wants to do more, she can do as much as she wants. If she wants to pursue a sport or not a sport, music, art, gymnastics, singing, whatever she wants to do, I want to be there to support her as much or as little as she wants to do it. And I hope, like my father, I can instill a work ethic more than guiding her in what she should be doing.
Yeah. It's funny when you talk about that. I could just see that dad coming down trying to just kind of correct what you're showing his son how to do or whatnot. And it's like, do you know who I am, buddy? Like, do you know who I am? I was not obviously I was not a baseball player. I played baseball in high school and that was about it. That was the extent of it. But I have a ton of coaching experience when it comes to baseball. I'm a better coach than I am a better player, whether it's baseball or basketball or football. And it's funny when I know how to coach kids, and I've had those dads that have come down and go, "Oh, maybe we should do it." I'm like, you know what? I'm a volunteer here, and your job as the parent is to cheer for your player, your son, cheer for the team. If you want to coach, then you can go sign up and be a volunteer coach, and you can come help me out. But for you, it's like I can't even imagine guys coming down there trying to correct what you're showing them.
Yeah. Again, my hope is that, and again, I know that my daughter is not in sports yet, so it's easy for me to say this at this point. But my hope is that I lived my dream to the fullest extent I could have, so that I do not need to live through her.
Right.
I want to support her in her life, in her career at whatever she does. I feel like a lot of times when parents live and die with their children's sports, it's because they didn't get to fully express their own dreams and they're living through the child.
Yep.
But like I said, it's easy for me to say that now.
No, you're absolutely right. You've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly the case. And a lot of times what happens is the parents are pushing their kids, in this case, I'll just speak to a father and a son. A dad's pushing his son to be the best baseball player he could possibly be because the dad didn't have that experience and he wants to live through his child's eyes. And then what happens is he pushes him and pushes him and pushes him and pushes him. And when that kid's 12, 13, 14 years old, he's burned out. Now he resents baseball. Now he doesn't like going to practices. Now he resents his dad. And now he just wants to do something else or do nothing at all. And that will continue to snowball until they're, into their adult life. There are exceptions to every rule. So there's exceptions to that. But for the most part, I've seen it happen where I've seen very, very young, talented players of the teams that I've coached that are just phenomenal players. And they have the ability, obviously we know the percentage from going from rec ball to high school and making the varsity team is very small. And then that percentage, when you go from high school and you get a scholarship to play in college, that's even that much smaller. Right. And then to get to the pro level, I mean, the chances of getting to the pro level are so small. It's like almost nil, but I've seen players that have that it factor to them, right? They have that it factor where they will probably be a professional player of some sort, but yet the pushing from the family, and I've just seen it just break down. And I coached a kid, Ryan. I coached a kid in high school basketball who had all the talent in the world to go not only play college basketball at a D1 school, but he had all the talent in the world to possibly make it to the professionals, and he didn't play one period in college.
Wow.
Not one.
I've seen it. I've seen it myself. With at this point, you talk about how there are coaches could become surrogate fathers or father figure role models. Because I'm a little younger, I have been a more of a big brother role model for a lot of the youth and high school players I've worked with. But I still have great relationships with these young men who I coached all the way through high school, or sometimes as early as 10 years old, who are now in college. And it's been very, very fun to watch those that have succeeded.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been heartbreaking to see the ones that break down and decide they don't want to do it anymore because of pressure from outside influences.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: when it comes to coaching some of those young kids, and you see these kids, maybe they don't have that father figure in their life. What has been some, I guess, I don't know if motivation is the right word, but what has been some advice you have given to these players when they're really trying to seek that dream of being a professional baseball player?
The biggest thing for me is it's two things, really. It's number one, remember why you're playing the game. Because if you remember why you're playing the game, you won't get burnout. Right? It's so easy to forget as soon as, especially at the professional level, right? As soon as money starts getting involved and you start playing for the money, you forget that you love it. You forget why you started playing. But when they're in high school, they're playing to get into college. They're playing to get the scholarship, to help their acceptance. And they forget even in high school why they're playing. You're playing because you love it. You're playing because you enjoy being around your team, because baseball teaches you right and wrong. So that's number one. And number two, if you're going to own your success, you also need to own your failure. You can't take full credit for all the good things you do and then make excuses when things go wrong. You need to own your strikeouts. You need to own your losses. You need to own your errors and then learn from them so that then you can really own your successes in a true way.
Yeah. And saying, I mean, that's so good. You're so right on about that. And when it comes to you as a professional, how hard is that as a professional baseball player? Because here you are as an elite baseball player, right? To own your own mistakes. Because I am a professional player. What do you mean I make mistakes? Do you understand? I'm at the top of the top. Like, I'm at the top now. So what do you mean I make mistakes?
Yeah.
I mean, how hard is that as a professional to acknowledge that? Because here you are preaching it to kids.
Yeah.
Yet as a professional athlete, that's hard for some of those guys to acknowledge.
Well, you kind of have to. You kind of have to, because when you're at the professional ranks, your mistakes are highlighted. Number one, the standard of what makes a mistake or what you're supposed to be able to do, the standard is much higher. I can tell you exactly about the worst game of my career right now if you're up for it.
Do it.
So I hardly remember when it was. It was August 6th. It was a Friday. It was 2013. We were in Houston. I remember everything. It was Stephen Wright's big league debut as a pitcher. He's a knuckleballer. He ended up making an all-star game a couple years later, but this was his first game starting in the major league. So he was nervous. Okay. Have you ever caught a knuckleball before, Bryan?
No.
When people ask me what it's like, the best way I've heard it described is like trying to catch a butterfly with chopsticks.
Okay.
At 75 miles per hour.
Right.
Okay. So we're in Houston. We're in Houston. They have a retractable dome. Okay. The weather's beautiful this day, but Houston, being the good franchise they are, understands that knuckleballers get in their heads about when the roof is closed because the aerodynamics of the ball and the wind resistance change. So they close the roof to mess with his head. And it works. Because in the first inning of the game, his knuckleball is moving so much, it's impossible to catch. 6 balls got past me on that day.
Ooh.
In the first inning. Okay? After the game, we ended up coming back to win, by the way. And I got the game-winning RBI. But after the game, I was informed that that is the most balls that have ever got by a catcher in one inning. Ever.
So you win the game off an RBI. You guys win the game off an RBI, and there's like not even maybe a word or two about it. The rest is, do you know how many balls got past you? Do you know that's a new record?
You know how I was informed, Bryan? Imagine there's 15 TV cameras and 25 microphones in your face. And the first question you're asked, I have a microphone right here I can use as a prop. The first question I'm asked is, Ryan, what did it feel like when you broke the record for inadequacy? So you talk about needing to own your mistakes. And you want to know why I remember it was a Friday? Because I made number 3 on the Sports Center not top 10 that night.
Oh my goodness.
So I got to see the worst game of my career running on a loop every hour on Sports Center.
So you get to see it because you experienced it. Then you get to see it because the reporter's got a microphone in your face, and then you get to see it every hour on a loop when you're walking by a television set.
So own your mistakes so that you can own your successes as well.
That's awesome. Great advice. I want to ask you one other question, because this is really important. And I do like to ask, especially athletes that I have on my show, I do like to ask this question. But it comes to that parent. We talked a little bit about that parent living through their child's eyes. But what advice would you give to parents that have that child that really thinks that they're going to be the next professional baseball player, football player, whatever it is? What advice would you give to them when it comes to having to raise a kid that really is at that point in their head where they have that goal, that dream?
Yeah. So I was that kid, right? I was the kid. And I think my parents did a good job of, number one, it's work ethic over results. And I saw a great study, the Huberman Lab podcast.
Yeah.
He shared a great study that when kids are praised for their test scores, the next test scores are not as high. But when they're praised for working hard and trying hard on the test, the next test scores get higher. There's really been research, I didn't do the research, but there has been research about praising work ethic over results. And my parents always did a great job. The second thing is perspective. I happened to grow up in Southern California, where it's one of the best little league atmospheres. You're playing against the best your whole life. So you need to live up to the best of your age bracket. Whereas now I live in Colorado, and these high school players have no idea how far behind they are because they don't see it. So if you have a kid that has a real chance, put them in the environment to play against the best in their age. At least show them that if you want to make it to the best, you're not competing against your area code or your zip code or your state or even your country. You're trying to be one of the best in the world. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more people that are better somewhere else. And then the third thing is give them opportunity to real coaching. Because all due respect, Bryan, I'm sure you're an amazing, amazing coach. But if you're trying to groom the next Hall of Famer, I think my experience and knowledge would help a little bit more than yours, just in the fact that I've been there.
Right.
And the easiest way to walk through a field of landmines is with someone that has been through that same field before. Right.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And just to clarify, yes, I coached my boys playing baseball all the way at, through Little League until they, got through 8th grade and went on into high school. I did not coach my son in baseball in high school, but I did coach both of them in basketball in high school. But when I coached them in Little League, from when they were 4 all the way up through 8th grade, I had a group of guys that coached with me. One of them played professional baseball. He played for the Angels. His name was he was a guy by the name of Steve Dunn. He was my pitching coach, and he was one of my coaches for many, many, many years. And then the other guy that coached with me played college baseball. So he had some college baseball experience. And so those 2 guys in particular stayed with me for many, many years in coaching these players. So I had guys around me that had the knowledge of the sport that I didn't have.
Well, and one of the beautiful things about the modern world is most people won't have access to a neighbor or another dad on the team that were professionals. But in this modern world, there's YouTube, there's podcasts, there's app, there's access to people that were the best and that are great coaches and can communicate it also, because the people that were the best at it aren't always the best communicators.
Right.
That's true. But there is access now for anybody to get great coaching if they're seeking it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. That's awesome. Great advice for parents. Ryan, if my parents wanted to look you up, learn a little bit more about you, what's the best places
Oh
for them
man,
to
I am
reach?
easy to find. LinkedIn, Ryan Lavarnway, Instagram, R Lavarnway. My website, ryanlavarnway.com, is under construction. So if you go there, it might glitch, but you might find my kids' book. Who knows?
What's
Um,
the name of your kids' book?
my kids' book is called Baseball and Belonging.
And what's it about? What's the premise behind it, and why did you write it?
I wrote this book, so it's through the lens of playing for Team Israel and finding my community. Because I grew up feeling like my family was tight, but I didn't know where I belonged outside of my family, other than on a baseball field.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote this book because I was giving it as a speech to adult audiences, um, and I was told that you need to share this story with young kids because when you're young, you still are deciding who you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
You're still deciding who your group and who your community is going to be, and they need to hear this story. They need to see an example of you following your passion, and through your passion, you find where you belong.
No, that's awesome. And where can they pick that up? Obviously, your
It is
website,
on
or
Amazon. It is on. It's anywhere you buy your books online. Baseball and Belonging, and it would make a great holiday gift.
yeah, absolutely. Well, cool, Ryan. Thank you, man, for being on the show. I appreciate who you are, and I appreciate your story. I appreciate you sharing a little bit of not only sports wisdom with us, but also from a parenting perspective, teaching our kids about basically the principles of really growing up and playing sports, not only at a little league level, but also at a professional level as well. So I appreciate you sharing that stuff. I appreciate you being on the show, and I'm looking forward to growing our friendship, my friend.
Yeah, no, Brian. I'm always looking to learn. So I appreciate even the small nuggets you shared with me about being a parent. And my little girl is so tiny still that I'd love to keep talking and keep learning and so I can try to be the best dad for her that I can be.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely stay in touch. Guys, listen, this has been another episode of Dad Up. Thank you again to my good friend Ryan Lavarnway for being on. Make sure you guys are checking out what he's doing. You can do that on all the links that are down below in the show notes. So make sure you guys don't miss any of that stuff. And also get his children's book. Pick it up and read that to your kids. Enjoy that, share that, whatever the case may be. But you can do that in the show notes as well. And as always, if you have not yet subscribed to my show, please make sure you do that at my YouTube channel or the podcast link so you don't miss any of the awesome guests that I have on each and every week. And as always, I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode of Dad Up. Wow, another amazing episode in the books. So much was shared, and I'm truly grateful my guest was able to pour into you to help you elevate your dad game and really dad up. Make sure you bang that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're here, please don't forget to leave me a rating and a review. I always appreciate the feedback. And one last thing, don't forget, your role as a dad is one of the most important roles you have. So if you need a little help or have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on my website at daduptribe.com or at my Instagram page at daduppodcast. Until next time, everyone, Dad Up.